Stock Growers Association, and I will turn it over to Ray Lee.
All right, thanks, Cassidy, and thanks to you and Blake and all of the state livestock auctions around the state. They've hosted all of these meetings for us, and we're really appreciative of them and their openness and willingness to partner with us and help us as we host these meetings. Also wanted to thank LMA, and we have a representative here today. Oh, no? Oh, a member. We have a member of LMA, but they have partnered with us as well to kind of get these meetings kicked off. So with that, I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Montana Stock Grower President John Grandy. John is going to just give a quick welcome as well as introduce some of our board members that are here and staff.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess we're on here. So again, thanks everybody for being here. This is a great turnout as we've traveled the state. We've had really good turnout everywhere. It's been extremely helpful for us. You know, again, we want to thank Blake. We want to thank Cassidy not only for tonight, but yeah, for last night as well, helping with the gathering in Stevensville. That's been great. So, yeah, you know, our executive vice president Ray Lee Honeycutt's here. You're going to be visiting quite a bit with our second vice president Turk Stovall. We actually have a couple of our directors off the board here this evening. Bob Sitz is here, and John Hagen. Where did John go? John Hagen. Oh, there's John Hagen Barth over there. So we appreciate having our directors here. I'd also like to recognize any special representatives or elected officials or anybody we have here this evening. We've been very fortunate at a lot of our meetings. We've had representatives from our congressional delegation. We've had some local legislators, and that's great. We really appreciate their interest. So I'll start out. Let Cindy introduce herself.
Thank you, John. I'm Cindy Perdue-Dolan. I live in Butte, and I cover all of southwest Montana for Senator Steve Daines. I worked 10 years for Conrad Burns, and I told him Conrad's always number one. Sorry, Steve. No, just kidding. But anyway, so I cover Beaverhead, Madison, Powell, Butte, Silver Bow, and Anaconda Deer Lodge counties, and look forward to see you. Hi, John. Thanks, John.
Do we have any other representatives from any of our congressional delegation or any like local legislators? Anybody else here this evening? All right, not seeing anything, but thank you very much, everybody, and back to Ray Lee.
Perfect. Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Cindy, for being here. It's been great. We've had both Senator Tester and Senator Daines have staff members attending many of our listening sessions, and it's great to have our elected officials here, having staff listening firsthand to the feedback and challenges that producers are facing around the state. Obviously, it's a great link to the next step of what this initiative will be doing, as many of the solutions that we will be probably bringing forward will be policy-based, and so we need those elected officials ready to go. In addition to that, and Turk might talk about it a little bit more, but John, Turk, myself, our first Vice President, Leslie Robinson, just spent a week in D.C. actually introducing this producer profitability initiative to our congressional delegation. So we're spreading the word and trying to share people's stories as much as we can. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Turk. Turk's going to give a little background about what this initiative is, how we started, where we're going. But before we do that, I did want to just let everybody know this meeting is being recorded and we are live streaming it. So our tech crew back there is helping us out with that, and that allows us to have folks listening online. We've had quite a few people actually watching virtually as well, in addition to attending these meetings. So, Turk, I'll let you kick it off and give a little background, and then we'll head into the program.
Yeah, thank you, Ray Lee. Again, my name's Turk Stovall. My family, we ranch south of Billings. We have some ranches down there, as well as a feed yard, and we also have a finish yard in Shepherd, Montana. Like John said, I'm our second vice president of Montana Stock Growers Association. And just a little bit of housekeeping to get us going is, as you came in, you saw Ian. Is Ian in here, or is he? Ian's, he oversees all of our membership services, and just make sure everyone has a handout. And then before the end of the night, we'll do a drawing for that cooler, and Ian can come around and make sure you're signed up. And then also you see here in the background is Allie. Allie oversees our government affairs, which is for sure a full-time job. And she's been a great asset to us as well. So just to give a little bit of a background, this is, gosh, is this our 10th meeting? 11th meeting across the state. And we're really taking how should I say, kind of a fresh approach to just some issues that have we've been talking about for, let's just say, years, but there's a little bit of background of why we're here and what we're trying to do. So several years ago, LMA held these working groups across the country, and they held one here in Montana and invited ranchers and farmers, producers here in Montana to really come together and say, you know what, we need to do something about working together, and we need to get some topics across the finish line that really make a difference for our producers in Montana as well as this industry. And how do we do that? And so we talked about many different issues, but the one thing that really made it the most effective is we said, you know what, there are some issues out here in our beef industry, it just doesn't seem like we can see eye to eye on, and we're just not going to talk about that right now. We're just going to set it over to the side. It's not that anyone's right or wrong, but just for the effectiveness of this meeting, we're not going to talk about that. And that's country of origin labeling, that's the beef checkoff, and that's the fed cattle market and the fat cattle market. And this just doesn't seem like those are areas that we can really come together quite yet as an industry. So we're just saying, hey, let's set that over here. But let's just talk about some issues that we think we can come together. And how can we bring in all organizations and say, you know what, we need to have a win for our producers to keep them in business. We need to get serious about how do we get this next generation not only wanting to be involved, but can they be involved, and can they be profitable and sustainable long into the future? And what are those issues that we can come together? We have extended invitation across the whole industry to come to these meetings, and we've really had such a great attendance. We've had leadership from RCAF, we've had leadership from U.S. Cattlemen's, Montana Farmers Union, Montana Cattlemen's Association, Farm Bureau, which we have a leader, one of the district directors from the state of Farm Bureau with us tonight, so thank you for being here. And because the bottom line is, as I always like to say, is the blizzard doesn't just hit one person. You know, it hits us all. When the grasshoppers comes, it takes us all out. You know, we all face these uncontrollable and variables that affects us all, and we really need to be able to come together as one voice, especially to our elected officials. So can you even imagine us trying to, or you being a politician, and you have all these different livestock organizations coming up to you with different opinions? You know, it's really tough. It's really tough to try to say, hey, what is the right thing to do? And so we really need to try to work together on that. And that is one of our main objectives. So tonight, I really want to encourage you to participate. This whole format is really not about us as stock growers talking. We're really the facilitators of real Montana farmers and ranchers' voices. And our team has done an awesome job of formatting this so it's recorded. We have an online, it's being streamed right now, so there's people listening to our discussion right now. So then when you do talk, please make sure you talk into the microphone, state your name, because we want your ideas. We don't want to lose the good ideas. And we're just going to try to stimulate thought process. There's been, especially on where we've been through most of the state now, we're going to share other ideas that really have come from these sessions, really just to try to make a better place for us, for sure, in Montana, and really for our industry. And so with that said, I'm going to hand it back over to Ray Lee, and we're going to purposely try to make you uncomfortable. We're going to purposely try to get you to participate. And our team has done an awesome job. Look on the second page here. We're going to be, that's the next spot. And get on the website. Rayleigh's going to take you through this survey. And if you need help, your phone doesn't work or anything, we have younger people around, and maybe older people around that can get your phones to working, but please participate. You'll see the answers, and Rayleigh will share them, but you'll see them again. So later on, you'll get the results. And then all of this is going to our mid-year meeting in June. And the reason that is because the whole reason why we started this whole process is after that LMA group got together, there were MSGA board members on that group. And they came together and said, hey, we need to try to do something together as a state. And they put together resolutions to go to the Montana Stock Growers State Annual Convention that was presented last December. And so then those resolutions were discussed, debated, changed, and then passed. And those resolutions said, hey, we need to do something about multi-generational ranching and make it sustainable. We need to look at what tools do we need to keep this next generation wanting to operate, and can they operate? And the other thing is, as a directive was passed, and that directive said, we need to unify this industry, and we need to try to get everybody to work together to really make a difference for Montana farmers and ranchers. And that's why we're here tonight. So with that said, I'll hand it over to Rayleigh.
Thanks, Turk. All right, so just to kind of frame what the evening will be, we'll dive into some interactive survey questions, and then the 5 categories on the front sheet of your handout, we'll kind of break those into each section, and through each section, we'll take some time to talk about those and allow you to chat about what you're seeing, what challenges you're having, what solutions you may have under those topics. So I will have you turn to the second page of your handout, and there is a QR code. If you're not familiar with how QR codes work, pull out your cell phone, open up your camera, and your camera will scan that QR code, and a website will pop up, and you can click on that. And then there's a highlighted set of numbers on your sheet. That's your passcode to get access into the survey. So we'll give you a few minutes to get logged in. I know Wi-Fi or your cell service might be a little slow in this metal building, but if you have any issues, raise your hand, and myself or Turk or Ian will run over and help you get your survey set up. Yeah. All right. It sounds like cell service might be a challenge, so I didn't ask Cassidy this, but I'll give you their Wi-Fi. I think it is, what is it called? What is it, the Wi-Fi? Something LA? What's it called? Montana LA, and the passcode is Fancy Frog with 2 capital Fs. Fancy Frog. Fancy Frog is the password with capital Fs. That works? Perfect. You need help? All right, anyone else need any assistance? Ian's available. Which part? I think the Wi-Fi is Montana LA, and then the password is Fancy Frog with both capital Fs. All right, let's kick to the first question. Good job, Ellie. You're ahead of me. All right, so for those of you that are on, our first question for you is, when you think about producer profitability, what 3 words come to mind? You can submit those words to us. If you're still having trouble logging in, Ian or I can run up and help you. So just raise your hand. Don't be shy. We really want to get your feedback. We're asking these same questions at every meeting that we have. So we're kind of looking for regional themes or themes within certain demographics, and then collectively we're going to put the entire state's data together to help inform our findings. So for those of you who may not be familiar, this is what is called a word cloud. A word cloud builds on submissions, so the more times the same word gets submitted, the word will become bigger on the screen. And so that will kind of help you better understand if people are thinking the same thing or if they're all different thoughts and submissions. Looks like folks are getting the hang of it, so we'll give you a few more seconds to get your submissions sent in, and then we'll head on to the next question. All right, Ellie. All right, next question for you. In 20 words or less, share with us the biggest challenges you face in your operations growth and success. All right, these are a little harder to read, so I'll read some out for you so you can see. Profitability, land availability, labor, financing, operating costs, obtaining pasture, access to grazing land, financial shortfalls, communication with the older generation and planning ahead, being able to expand due to lack of available land. There's no audience shaming up there. Don't be guessing who's submitting what. Labor shortage, we've heard a lot around the state regarding labor. I think that's a universal challenge we're seeing industry-wide. Right. All right, Ellie, let's move to the next question. In the last 10 years, what tools or programs have been the most beneficial to your operations profitability? If there's specific government programs, we'd love for you to throw those up there. We've heard a lot about public-private partnerships. There's some regional partnerships, kind of with Winnet ACES or RSA up in the Malta country that we've heard about. So if there's something that's working in your community or something that you guys have really found valuable, we'd love to hear those from a details perspective. All right, get those last submissions in. All right, Ellie. What do you believe the biggest challenge for the livestock industry will be, or what they will face in the next 20 years? All right, and as Turk mentioned, you filled out that form. We'll be sending you a follow-up email. Some of these word clouds will be included in that email, so you can kind of take a deeper dive where the wording is not so small and see what other folks have submitted. So looks like we are getting some great responses submitted. So let's move on. And this is the last question before we kind of open it up to our open discussion. It's great to see all different ages in the crowd today. So we really want to hear from you regarding succession planning and share with us what category you relate to the most. You are a young producer transitioning into an operation. You have a succession plan. You're in the process of creating a succession plan. You don't have a succession plan. You are planning to exit the industry, or you're something more like allied business where this isn't necessarily applicable to you. And I did that all by memory because those are very small words up there. Young at heart, young, however, the average age of a beginning farmer or rancher is 47 years old, so I'll leave it to you. You can self-identify. It's great to see that no one is saying that they're planning to exit the industry. Every meeting I think we've held so far, so 11 meetings across the state, we've had at least 2 people saying that they plan to leave the industry instead of transitioning it. So you guys are in a good spot here in this area. All right, Ellie, we should be good there. All right, put your phones away. Don't close out of that screen. We're going to revisit that at the end of this session. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Turk, and Turk's going to start with our kind of listening session portion. So, Turk.
Yeah, thanks, Rayleigh, and thanks for everybody for participating. It's I know those words are hard to kind of read up there, but you'll see them again, and it's just it's interesting seeing the feedback of your peers and your neighbors and other producers in your area. But I would have to say also, Rayleigh, what's been interesting is those those responses shift a little bit as we've gone across the state. By far, there's a lot of similarities, but I'm learning. Because I'm south of Billings, but just my goodness, our state is very diverse, and we're all faced with so many different things to keep our operations going, especially from an environmental standpoint. So what we're going to get to now is what the Stock Growers Executive Committee as well as the Producer Profitability Task Force did is they looked at those resolutions and said, okay, if we were going to try to boil it down to some topics that really we hear a lot about. It's not like this is the list that solves it all, but this is for sure a heck of a start. And that's what you see on your handout here, and that's these first 5 topics. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of time, and we're going to go through each one of these topics and say, hey, let's start with taxes, and let's just take a little bit of time and just talk about taxes. And what do taxes do to our operations? And especially what do tax policies do to the next generation? And by and large, I mean, the elephant in the room is the estate tax. You know, that is set to expire. And if nothing happens, all of those, our policies now go back to a previous policy that can be pretty devastating. And I'm going to ask John Grandy just to come up and just give a kind of brief overview of that, and then maybe just mention some stuff on accelerated depreciation as well.
Sure. Thanks, Turk. Most of you probably know this already. If you don't, you're going to be hearing a lot about it in the next year or so. But just as Turk said, the current federal estate tax we have, those laws on the books expire at the end of 2025. So currently, we have an estate tax. We think it's a bad tax. We think it's unfair. We'd like to see the complete elimination of that tax. However, at least right now, you've got an exemption that's indexed to inflation. So currently, that individual exemption is in the neighborhood of $13 million. So for a married couple, that puts you in the neighborhood of a $26 million exemption. So you can all do the math, look at the value of your farms and ranches. There's a lot of ranches in the state that are worth less than $26 million. There's a lot of them that are worth more than $26 million. But it's an unfair tax we want to get rid of. But at least at $26 million, you know, there's some wiggle room, some things you can do there. If those current laws expire at the end of next year, that exemption reverts back to, I don't remember the exact number, but it's in the neighborhood of $5 million. So think about the difference there. How many of your ranching operations are worth more than $5 million? And I mean, that's going to cover almost everybody, you know, and there are those in Congress that would even like to take it below that and make that exemption 1 million or 2 million, which not only affects the ranches, it affects Main Street businesses, it affects an awful lot of people. So kind of about our number one priority right now is we have to see Congress act in the next year and a half to hopefully eliminate that tax altogether. At the very least, do something like extend those current exemptions. But along with that, as Turk mentioned, there's other things that tie in there as well. Special use valuation, which is so small now, it's hardly a big deal, but it still is a tool some people use. There's depreciation rules, bonus depreciation, Section 179, that are very helpful to people. You know, when you give a property or any kind of an asset to the next generation, you get a stepped up basis. You know, these are very important things that we need to work on maintaining. There are bills introduced in both houses of Congress currently to work on this. Congress passed 34 bills all of last year, and that wasn't even an election year, and 3 of those bills were continuing resolutions. So the chance of getting action on this year, like I say, there's bills introduced, but they're probably largely placeholders. There's probably nothing going to get done this year. But at least we need to keep the conversation going. We need to keep this out and in front of everybody so we get something done by next year. I guess I will briefly mention, too, this kind of another subject, but that's the big one, the federal stuff. At the same time, some of the things we're looking at the most on the state level is property tax. As most of you are aware, property taxes went way up last year. The governor currently has 2 different task forces in place. You know, one looking at the property tax increases and a lot of the residential property taxes and what's going on there, and another one looking specifically at basically ag land tax valuation or tax definition, which is something that we've brought up and pushed for, is because, you know, currently to get your property classified as ag land for tax purposes, you have to have $1,500 of agricultural income. So if you run 1 cow and sell the calf, That's an agricultural operation. With more and more properties, people buying acreage and building big mansions, but yeah, if they got one cow, or as people buy ranches and convert them more to recreational properties, is it right that these still get an agricultural tax classification? We don't have the answer to that, but we do have a representative of Montana Stockgrowers, John Lewis, sits on that task force. They got a lot of good people that are looking at this, so we look forward to seeing some of the answers that they come up with. And that's one of the things, if any of you has ideas on that you want to discuss tonight, we would welcome input on that, and John would certainly welcome input for that task force. So I guess that's more than enough on taxes, but just a little background.
So that's just to kind of give an idea of where the current tax climate is, and it's I'll just turn the mic over to you all if there are some thoughts or feedback relative to the state tax or anything that we just discussed or anything else we need to highlight. We'll just take a couple minutes here. We can run a mic up to you, or you can come down here, but it's important that you talk in the mic so everyone online can hear you, and we can get it recorded.
Is it working? Hello. I know some people who just bought a place and it might be 10 or 15 acres and they have horses and run a horse business out of there, but they can't, it's not considered agriculture. Their property taxes are ridiculously high. Is there an acreage? I mean, how come a horse operation that they breed some horses, sell some horses, they do a lot of ranch work, but I mean, it's a retarded amount of property taxes, like $4,000, $5,000 for 15, 20 acres.
I do not know that answer. Do you?
I don't know tax code completely memorized, but I would say they could reach out to Department of Revenue and ask that question because, as John said, for that size of acreage, all you need is $1,500 currently of gross receipts for agricultural products. Can be considered class 3. Yep.
Okay, good. Anybody else? Thank you.
On the estate tax elimination, if there's no movement on that, will there be consideration? And it kind of ties to the property tax what they're doing classification is if you can't eliminate the estate tax, is there a way to go about looking into an ag exemption? Is that a possibility? If there's no movement on eliminating it. And with that, obviously ties kind of towards classification because we don't want to, help a APR when it's the family ranchers we're trying to, help with that. So just a thought if there's no movement on eliminating it.
Well, I guess I'll kind of take a first stab at it. I think the likelihood of us getting complete elimination is very low, that likelihood. I think the best effort that we will have is to status quo, or maybe a little better, or not having it decrease at all. Related to the second part, we haven't really dove into that very much, but we've heard from multiple people, and Turk says it all the time, agricultural or people that are producing food is a national security issue, and we should in some way be incentivized for producing food for our country. So I think that route is a very valid solution that we can explore. I'll grab you next. Also, can you make sure you say your name in the microphone? Ellie's taking notes. That was Ross Morgan.
Yeah, my name is Jay Marchessault, and I just have one question. I hear rumblings every once in a while out of D.C. about a wealth tax. and that is potentially a hugely impactful thing. But it seems to be a knob that they love to talk about turning to get, you know, redistribution of wealth. So.
My name's Kevin Arian. I'm here with Eric. I'm actually from Idaho. But to address your issue on other alternatives for the estate tax, Oregon has a program where they call it a natural resource credit. So if you're in the ag industry, you can get that natural resource credit. The problem with Oregon is too small. It's only 7.5 million, and it only applies to the whole outfit. You don't get a marital double on that. And the rules are is it has to stay in the family. The farmer ranch has to go to a family member and stay there for 10 years. But if you could get that up to 50 million or something like that, that would take care of your problem.
Thank you. We've actually heard that. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say we've heard that similarly as a solution here. Is there a tax credit incentive, something like that, that can be spread over a period of time to incentivize that transition and not penalize people? Go ahead.
That's a wonderful idea. I'm a native Montanan and fourth generation early homesteaders. And one of my frustrations with the estate tax was that it was set up to break up the big feudal European style of farms, but we had to sell all of our summer pasture so that we could pay the estate tax, and it had double taxation, and then on top of it, other rich people who had much bigger places than us got it. And so there should, to me, be some kind of a limitation. And not that we want a lot of people moving into a subdivision, so it's little. At the same time, for other people to get what they were trying to prevent us from just existing, I don't have good solutions. I just am complaining, but it really is frustrating to me.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, personal stories are great. That helps us. I mean, we were able to utilize and share some of these personal stories when we were back in DC just a week or so ago.
So, just a second. So, just wanted to get caught up here. So, like John talked about special use. The overlying is how do we keep it in production? And it kind of goes to your comment too, just the multi-generation. Is, you know, we talk about, hey, we need it eliminated. We talk about, okay, if we can't get it eliminated, very similar to what's apparently is going on in Idaho, where it was in Glasgow. We got a gentleman came up with the idea saying, hey, I want to give this to my children. But so if I give them my children, I'm exempt from all estate taxes, but it has to stay in production for at least 10 years. But it goes back to the point that the land needs to be in production. And, you know, as we were in DC here a couple weeks ago, as we were sharing the previous meetings we had with yours and ours elected officials, like we were saying, hey, what do we want our agriculture to look like in 20 years? You know, as the land prices keep getting up, are the bigger just going to get bigger? Or what do we need to do to try to say, hey, we need to change the trend line here? And at what point do we have less amount of land in production just to even feed our own country, just from a national security standpoint? So, I mean, you all bring up an awesome points, and there's similar talks from the others as well, and that's what we got to get to completely.
I'm Tim Bruner, and I'm on the Montana Cattlemen's Association board, and we would really like to work with the stock growers on especially the property tax situation. One thought we've brought up and kind of passed back and forth on the ag exemption is percentage of total revenue. And I think it's a very simple, common sense way. If you make 75, 80% of your living off that land, then you qualify. But it's an issue that needs to be taken care of, and I think if we work together, we can get it done.
You know, I actually think that was brought up too before. I mean, that's a good thought. Because in some, especially with the LMA meetings, there was accountants and attorneys there, and so, that's out of my league. But that's you're getting down into classifications. But that's a great thought too.
Tim, on that, just briefly, one thing we've been very concerned about is we don't want producers to have to do something, fill out 28 pages of paperwork to prove that they're still an agricultural operation. But as we've gone around visiting with people, we've been maybe a little bit surprised that a lot of folks have told us, yeah, obviously it can't be just horrendously complicated, but if they have to do a little bit of something to prove that they're an agricultural operation, they're okay with that. And something like you suggest, I mean, that reminds me of like our gas tax refund. You have to fill out a little form, and it's a nuisance. It takes you a few minutes, but it's not overwhelming. And most producers we talk to are open to something like that.
Anything else, just relative to tax rate here?
Jules Marcia. So I've been in this business a long time, and I think the most important thing is to be well informed. I've talked to so many people, they haven't got a clue what's going on. They just go out and just do it. Be informed, and then do something about it.
Good point. Anyone else? Right up here.
I know years ago with the inheritance tax, there was something called a corporate split up. Is that still a viable option today? This was like 20 years ago, and I think it was a deal where it was a 4-year process, and it was, you dealt with whoever you're handing the place down to, you kind of did that. They developed their own name for their outfits, and then later on, whoever had the ranch to begin with, when they passed away or whatever, could leave the rest of what they had left. I didn't hear anything about that, and I just was wondering if it still existed or what was going on there.
Do you have any accountants in the audience?
I don't know. I guess, I'll share just, some personal. So we, in the mid-2000s, we started putting things in trusts. I don't know if that's kind of the same thing because we had to split it up as well, but, yep.
Here. I got it.
So we went through something very similar to that about 5 years ago. And yeah, so it was just, it's when my grandfather's corporation was split into 4 corporations, one for each of his sons, one of who's my father. And it was a non-taxable event. And there was a 5-year period where, whatever transfers to them had to remain, at least a majority of the shares had to remain in their ownership. And then that new corporation continues as its own entity, and the original corporation basically kind of, and yeah, it stays the same, but it's much smaller now.
So did that have a term, kind of like what, just so we can research it, or is that?
I don't remember the term he used. It was.
Got it.
Yeah.
You heard of that, John, or no?
It's kind of like I don't know what the rules are, if there can't be any new players, or there are certain boundaries, I'm sure.
Yep.
But we were just pretty much under the guidance of our lawyer, who kind of orchestrated the whole thing. So.
Yep. Anybody else on just the tax rate up here?
Yeah, John Ferret. I'm a cow-calf producer out of Toston. I went to the Three Forks meeting several weeks ago and said that I would pay attention from there on out and come back with something to say. Since then, I've watched, I think, every meeting that you've had. I guess my thought on the estate tax is we definitely need that exemption higher. And what came out of a lot of these meetings is the fact that we're deemed essential workers in agriculture. And I think anything we say tonight, we need to put that in front of it, is because we're essential. And so that would be for agriculture. I don't think the movie stars and sports players and rich people that buy ranches need that estate tax taken away, so I would caution the complete elimination of it. In our ranch, when we were doing transitions, I guess in my time, Congress threatened that repeal of the estate tax twice. We finally got it to an exemption. It never had a problem when it was happening, but it does cause some ulcers while they're debating it, so it is good to get ahead of that. I guess property tax, in theory, you're getting a service with property tax, but there again, agriculture, we are essential. We shouldn't be taxed like the mansions. I guess that's what I have to say on that.
Yeah, great point. Let me just give a little background of that, and that's, thank you for bringing that up. So in previous meetings, we talked about, and this goes into some of the other topics, but on the fact of as we went through the COVID time, we learned that we are essential operations. And like for an example with us is the feed yards, like we still had to make sure the feed truck was running. You guys still had to make sure the cows were fed. You still had to chop ice, and it didn't matter if you didn't feel good or not. And that was our reality check, I think, in America and our food, because there was no food in the shelves. And I really believe it was a moment in time where, at least in modern day America, there was a like, oh, our American producers are pretty darn important. And so with that said, it's like we need to almost remind everybody how essential that we are if we don't show up to work. And there's nobody in this room would ever consider not showing up to work. But what happens is everyone takes this for granted. Now, I probably shouldn't say that, but the fact is we have to get to the point from a public policy standpoint. The overlying topic is we are essential, and this land has to stay in production, and these producers have to be, at least have some sort of, I don't know if it's a special classification. We're using the term essential because we were just taught that in the last 5 years, right? And but I do think that's an overlying topic that we better not forget about as producers.
Yeah, Carl Christian's ranch over in East Helena Valley, and with my son here, and you know, we need these younger generations to be able to survive. They have to work a day job and come home and fill in where I can't fill in as much, and eventually take over, and it's harder and harder. And as Turk mentioned, they're essential. These smaller guys, young guys, they're essential. As we get older, as old guys are going to fade away, we got to keep these young guys in. And so maybe a little tax reform to where if you're a young producer or a new farmer rancher, you know, in the first 10 years they get a ag tax break, and something just a little more of an incentive for them to keep it in. You know, if I tip over, you know, it's worth a lot if you look at a subdivision, but that's not where the heart is. The heart is in agriculture, but if you can't afford it, it's going to go to a house, kind of a deal. So,
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Now, we can always come back to any of these. I'm just going to move on to the next topic just for time's sake, but let's talk a little bit about government programs. And, you know, government programs in the livestock industry sometimes can be an electric discussion, right? Should the government be involved in the livestock industry or not? And what is involved in the livestock industry, does it work? And so we've been talking a lot about LRP, livestock risk protection. There's a hand in your packet there. There's just kind of a brief description about LRP. We've been talking about the FSA programs, you know, how to get, you know, beginning farmers and ranchers or young farmers and ranchers. You know, we keep playing back and forth, is beginning farmer rancher or a young farmer rancher? Well, we believe the average age of a young farmer coming into the business right now is 47. So meaning times have changed over the last 20 or for sure 50 years of, you know, you don't graduate high school and you go back to the farm. Or like my family, they graduated 8th grade and went back to the farm. You know, and so, you know, it's just, we've evolved. You know, a lot of times generations don't come back to the farm right away because there's just no room, or you just can't economically do it. So maybe they had to go to school or they had to go work for someone else, and now we're trying to bring them back around, and maybe the senior generation is saying, you know what, I'm ready now for you to come back home. You know, I mean, there's to each their own. Everyone has a different story. But the bottom line is, do all of these programs that are set to help the next generation come in, do they work? And so that has been what we've been asking for, and asking for, you know, all ages to come and give comment on that. Question is just from an LRP standpoint, does everyone understand LRP? Or LRP is livestock risk protection. So that would be also a specific item in one of the stock growers' resolutions that was passed to look at. And particularly, should LRP be have some maybe tweaks to it to make it a little more usable, especially for a younger producer or a newer producer? And should the subsidy be more to make the premium more affordable so we have more access to it? One other consideration is the LRP should be able to be enacted the second that you take risk on the cattle. So as a cattle buyer for our feed yards, if I buy cattle off one of the videos in the summer, but I don't take physical position into the feed yard in Shepherd, Montana until October, I should be able to take that risk protection the second that I raise my hand and I'm the successful bidder. And as of right now, you can't do that. So those are just some ideas, just to get some thoughts processed. So if there's other ideas, would love to hear them. Also would love to hear about the FSA programs. We've heard from different lenders at times. Like right now, you know, the direct loan is $600,000. Does the $600,000 do anything? You know, we've had some young producers come up and say, you know what, they give us just enough money to hang ourselves. You know, so I'll just kind of leave it over to you guys and get some of your thoughts as well.
Scott Perkins from Deer Lodge, working in the financial industry and with FSA on loans. There's a couple things. The amounts that they have, there's the 300,000, 600,000, and quite frankly, that's not enough to really get a good start. The other thing is they have guaranteed loans that the financial institutions are able to work with. But the problem is this offices that process them at FSA are understaffed, so you're spending months on a simple request, and it's a detriment to the producers.
I can't remember which meeting it was where there was some thought about where, man, we've had a lot of meetings. So where maybe the government's more of a guarantor and the bankers are the bankers. And so not trying to ask the FSA offices to be a banker, you know, was a discussion point to probably. Yep.
On that FSA limit, on those beginning farmer loans, can't we get up to about 1.5 with the participation of the bank? So, yeah.
Hold on. So they've got there's a number of different programs, a down payment program, direct loans. The maximum that you can get is just over $2 million.
Right.
So by the time you get through it, but you've got to be able to put that piece together to get there, and with the 300,000, you're not getting as far.
I own a company in Idaho that does a lot of those. We work with FSA. Our biggest hurdle in getting done is the appraisals, actually. So the guaranteed loans and the beginning farmer, the biggest thing's the appraisals. So.
So we haven't had the appraisal problem here. It's been the timeline.
Yeah, that's
So-
interesting.
So I've had loans take up to 9 months.
Wow.
Because of the staff shortage
Huh.
within the FSA.
You got to buy better whiskey for the FSA, I think. So.
Great feedback. Here we go.
So I just have a question. What are the, how do you qualify? That's like somebody entering into the business or somebody expanding, or what are the kind of requirements to qualify?
We should just leave a mic with you, Scott.
I haven't found one I haven't liked. There's different requirements for the different loan programs is what it boils down to. So I don't know if that answers the question, but there's a lot of different steps, and not every operation is the same. So when you do work with these government lenders, they're going out of a book where everything's the same, but not everything is the same. I had an operation, all irrigated ground. They run yearlings. We send the application. Well, they send it to an office in eastern Montana. The lady calls and says there's no way they can run that many cattle on that property. Well, it was 100% irrigated. I said, well, you got to have that sensibility in between too, and know your local area.
Go ahead, Cassidy.
I guess going back when I first started, I tried going through the FSA, and it did take a long process, and I got frustrated with it, so decided to just go to the bank. And at the bank, come to find out, I turned everything in. There was no limit, the 300,000 or the 600,000 limit, and the bank just essentially did an FSA guaranteed loan. And so it was a lot quicker. You could borrow more than what the FSA was going to limit you to, and then plus you get your operating with that also, unlike the FSA. So if you just go right to the bank, essentially it's FSA guaranteed anyways.
Great discussion. Anybody else? Yeah. Good.
And that is a good point, and a lot of banks have that ability. But another problem we're seeing in the financial is the consolidation of these banks. And as we see, in 12 years, Montana went from 72 charters down to less than 30 state chartered banks. And that's a real problem, because not every financial institution is going to take the risk on ag loans. It takes a real stomach for risk, and to be able to work with bank regulators on ag operations, because when a bank regulator shows up, they're even further removed than the FSA people, and trying to explain to them the decision-making process becomes very difficult. So I understand why these banks move away from the ag loans, and so I think that's probably as critical as anything is the bank consolidation, as well as the FSA side of things, is the bank consolidation with the regulatory burden that they have from people that don't understand the industry. They come in and they try to apply stuff from commercial businesses onto the ag industry. For example, if you sell a capital piece of equipment out of an industrial business, most of the time you have to inform the banker that you're going to sell that. Well, if you have a cull cow, you just haul it to town and sell it. And so there's a lot of trying to navigate that with a bank regulator becomes a challenge.
Yeah, that was really good. One other thing might be helpful if you're seeking FSA funding is see if the bank you're dealing with is what we call a preferred lender, FSA preferred lender. And what that means, that bank's gone through the underwriting criteria with the FSA, and the FSA accepts their underwriting. And that helps a lot with your timeline, actually. So that, everybody wants to draw a fee. All these banks want to draw a fee, but the ones that are serious about ag are what we call preferred lenders.
Anybody else? Thoughts? John?
John Helly from Dillon. I'm also a director on Ag West Farm Credit, and we've got a really good young farmer, beginning farmer program that's fairly easy to qualify if you're a beginning farmer rancher. Ag West can do FSA guaranteed loans. We've got a good program, Jumpstart, all sorts of programs that we can waive fees and give you preferential treatment. You can earn credits on educational things and get rate-wise program, get your rate dropped. So some of the banks, and especially the Farm Credit Bank here in this region, which is Ag West, would have lots of opportunity for young people to get started in that.
So then would Ag West, I'm assuming, be one of those preferred lenders, or anybody else? So just some big thoughts on government programs is, should there be other government programs relative to the livestock industry? There was one example by a young producer that would say, hey, he felt it was easier for him to more or less get into the farming sector due to the farm programs with the government versus, if I wanted to go out and lease some grass and buy some bred heifers. And then where other discussions just talk about there's this kind of differentiation of equity between farming government programs and livestock government programs, to where you're measuring the farming programs in the billions and you're measuring the livestock programs in the hundreds of millions. Now, does that matter or not? I'm just bringing it up that was just been the discussion points. And so, where you have base acres with tillable ground, should you have base acres with grazing ground? And just throwing it out there for if anybody has any thoughts on that too. Anything else on government programs? Labor. Now, all of us talk about labor all the time. I don't even know you, but I know you probably talk about it. And, it seems to be this topic that kind of just doesn't get any better. And as you have family operations and you're trying to justify either the next generation coming home, or you're trying to expand, or you just need help, it's just hard to find. And so these immigration programs have really come to light, especially over the last 10 years, and I'd say even more so in the last 5 years. And so we've had a lot of discussion about the H-2A programs and just other immigration options. And so with that said, just to share some information, like for our family, we use South Africans, and we go through the H-2A program, but then we also use T and Visa Mexicans, actually, and they are Mexicans that have a veterinary degree in Mexico, and then they go on a lot of our health teams, either pin writers or doctors. Their degree doesn't mean anything in the United States, so we have consulting veterinarians and nutritionists. They have to follow those protocols anyway, but it's been a big deal for us. And so there's been many feedback just from these meetings where there's some guys saying, hey, if I couldn't utilize the H-2A program, I'd hang it up. We just heard that last night, and so just wanted to open that up for discussion. We've heard from custom cutters, actually in, Glendive, and just how important these programs are to operations. We learned that the U.S. House of Representatives just came out with a task force report making some improvements to the H-2A program on just how, each state has a minimum wage. So like Montana is $16 and something, I guess. Hans said it last night, it was $16.80, which I should know that, but I don't do our payroll. So it's, and then North Dakota's in the 17. So each state's a little bit different. And then depending on the job description, that might add to it too. So for an example, if the minimum is 16, but they have a CDL and you're having them do hauling, that's an additional $10, period. So is that fair or not? I don't know, but just putting it out there for discussion. There's formulas that the U.S. Congress was re-looking at, saying, hey, these formulas maybe need to be tweaked. Like right now, if you hire an H-2A worker, they can only work for you no more than 10 months because it's a seasonal, it's for peak season labor. So when the H-2A was put together, it would be more for like row crops to where you can get your, you need extra help to get the, your crop harvested into the market or storage. It was not meant to be, a full-time employee. So with that said, I mean, it's a process. You have to petition to even be qualified to have the worker. Your housing has to be approved. So once your housing is approved by the Department of Labor, then your petition goes in, then you wait to see if your petition is approved, and then you go to hire, but you also have to advertise for Americans as well. So if American applies at the same time you're trying to hire a H-2A person, and that American is qualified and wants to work for you, you are pretty much obligated to hire that American. So, I mean, it's not easy, but it's a tool. And so just leaving it out there for discussion or any feedback.
I'll just add, I think, Turk, the biggest takeaway, or one of the biggest takeaways from that report that you said that the House just issued, was they are recommending a 12-month H-2A program. And so we heard last night like how much that would be a game change for a lot of people if they were able to keep their workers here for 12 months. So we'll open it up for any comments. It could be about H-2A workers, but also, bringing in the next generation of workers or people that maybe have a limited knowledge skill set on production agriculture in general and some of the challenges that you experience. I'm trying to get them the skills that they need to be around livestock and equipment and things like that.
Cindy, Purdue Dolan again. I just want to ask a question with regard to this task force update about the 12-month H-2A. Would that be a big savings as far as, because the impetus to have 10-month and then you're charged, it's incumbent upon the rancher to pay for housing and the travel back and forth to that country, food on the way, I think still, all of those expenses, if it were to go to 12 months and that was approved, would that be a huge savings for folks?
Turk, you want to answer? John?
Well, I definitely have an opinion, but I don't want to be the only guy talking. So does anyone else have a thought?
John Hilly again. We have a sheep operation, so we have H-2A herders on contracts, and that also applies to them where we have to have 2 contracts a year now, so we have to buy 2 sets of visas to get them through the year. We used to have some special provisions, and we'd like to get those codified into law to help our sheep herder program that's been around since the 1950s to help make that right, but where we didn't have to, reapply twice a year and pay all the visas and all that just to keep them on a contract that was less than 10 months. So now we have winter sheep herders and summer sheep herders, and it's burdensome. And I guess the rates are going up now to, I guess, $1,000 a person for a visa, and it's getting quite burdensome, and you have to do that twice a year. So anything that would help us, in that 12-month and year-round would help.
Bob?
I was going to say, along with that, I'm Bob Sitz. We have, between my brother and I, we probably have 4. My longest H-2A worker has been with me 18 years. But I guess on the 12-month, I'm a little confused on that because, like our guys, they're only allowed here 6 months, and they go back. On a 12-month, and these guys look forward to going back, don't get me wrong. On a 12-month, would they be able to be here all the time? Or do they still have to go back? Because we're really happy with the guys we get because we get the same ones. I mean, we'd love it to be 8 months or something longer, but anyhow. And the other thing is, it seems like if you change your, let's say you've had the same H-2A workers for the same duration every year, the paperwork is way easier and they don't get flagged for an audit as easy. That's just something we see. And one of the biggest problems I see with the H-2A program is you never know when they're going to get here. Every year is different. One year they might be here when they're supposed to get here. The next year they might be a month late. And that's been a problem, especially with a lot of people that have them for calving or even probably lambing or some of these things like that.
Yeah, we heard last night, I think, a guy in the Bitterroot said his worker was supposed to show up February 1st, and he arrived this Sunday. So he was supposed to be for calving season, and now they're pivoting and going to be utilizing him for something else.
So just to kind of recap there. So keep in mind, I and it's a little bit of my opinion, but also with quite a bit of experience, just first-hand experience, is these programs really were derived for row crops. And now we're trying to get them to work more with livestock operations. So just trying to have the Department of Labor understand a livestock operation versus a farming operation, oh my goodness, that is a steep lift just in itself. I want to say the sheep industry's probably led the charge in that, and the cattle industry is on the coattails of the sheep industry. And so we've been augmenting. All right, this works for the sheep guys. Now, could we have them do this too? So that really needs to evolve, because the livestock operations, or in particular the cattle operations, are really needing this, and we're hearing it loud and clear, especially the last couple months. And so with the 12-month for sure decreases what I'm going to call transaction costs. In my opinion, the H-2A is not our least cost option. It's our best option of getting a good employee. Now, I could probably spend the next hour talking about an American young employee right now on how that's changed. Just on how they, they're working for you tonight and then they go to the bunkhouse and they're not there tomorrow. But one thing about it is these immigrants who come here, and I'm going to say 99% of the time, and John, you tell me, I mean, they really need the job and they really appreciate it. And one thing I always share is the fact that, like I always shared the story in several other of our talking sessions here, is I was at the feed yard looking at some cattle, and I was following our feed truck, and the feed truck stopped in front of me. Well, then they get out, and they see it's my pickup, and they come back to me. So I'm thinking, okay, there's a problem, or he's going to quit, or I'm going to get chewed out, or there's just something's not right, right? I mean, that's almost how you're kind of gauged anymore. But this gentleman, he was from South Africa, and he said, Mr. Stoll, I haven't met you yet. He goes, but I just wanted to make sure you knew how much I appreciate this job, what it means to my family, and I don't know what I would do without it. I have employed a lot of people in my little career, and I'm not that old. I have never had an American tell me that. And so just the attitude is just such a breath of fresh air. So it's worth it, the extra cost. Now, do we want to keep seeing it ratchet up? Because there's going to be a point where we're going, can't do it. The one thing I will directly ask the senator's office is we need help. And I don't know what that is. And everyone's alluded to it, is this timing. It just seems like our system gets so bogged down that it takes a nudge from our elected official to say, hey, you know what? These guys are not getting their workers on time. And I believe 9 times out of 10, it is just pure due to bureaucracy. And so I don't know how that's addressed, but just so you're aware. The other thing, especially with our Mexican workers, they get held up in the consulate. And so it's just, especially other people that hire the TN visas, is I would be faster to drive down to the border and pick up somebody than try to go through all of this process, because we have 4 approved Mexicans, let's say it was in May of 22, and we're still waiting for one of them. So anyway, as you can see, I calm down here, but the point is it's a really needed help, and it's important to the producers. Yeah.
Is it a paperwork question? Is it staffing the federal agencies like the FSA? Or is it something else? It's just too much demand? Or what do you think is the biggest holdup that I can relay to the senator?
Well, I don't know enough about the system to really give a very good answer. My bias is just the government's slow, and I don't know how to recommend a fix. Anybody else? Labor. One other thing we didn't mention that came up was the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense has a skill bridge program to where they will pay for that military person to virtually come work for you. It's almost like a job shadow. And their whole objective is to, hey, this person is getting ready to, get out of or be discharged from the military, and what are they now? What type of thing? And so they're trying to work with different industries to get them placed, or at least have them have a look at it. And so that's another thing for you to for sure be aware. And obviously, just good people there. Anything else relative? Oh, yeah.
So I spent a big chunk of my career working in electric utilities in California. And we utilized often a program called Helmets to Hard Hats. Similar probably to what you're talking about, but it was for people about to get out of the military, either at the end of their initial obligation or they're getting ready to retire. And it was a great program, so.
Great. Cassidy?
I know there's a lot of talk about these programs that do help, but at these meetings, has there been any talk about getting the younger generations, giving them an incentive to work at your ranch? Like keeping the Americans working on these ranches, do we have an incentive for them to stay there, like giving them so many head of horses they can run on the land, giving them so many head of cattle every year that they can run free and clear, for these younger kids to be like, oh, okay, well, this is a way I can start building my herd if I start on your ranch working, and eventually maybe work up to something bigger. But at least they got to start working on somebody's ranch. So an incentive like that, I think, to get the Americans to want to work on the ranch. Maybe they just feel like they're working 7 days a week, as many hours as you possibly can, and they're collecting a paycheck, when really maybe, okay, you can run 10 head of cows also would keep them there longer.
Yeah, good point. And I'm going to, so that's a yes. And we're going to bring that up in the next segment.
Just to carry that just one notch lower even is with the younger generation. 5 years ago, I approached our superintendent of the new up-and-coming East Helena High School and said, Ron, we need an ag education and FFA. Surprisingly, he said, absolutely, do it. So long story short, we got an ag teacher, got an FFA program, new superintendent, new principal. After a couple of years, budget cuts, first thing that's on the chopping block. First thing, ag education and FFA. And so it's that we need a more push from the local level with our school boards, with our schools we got to keep these ag education going, FFA, because we got to keep these kids interested. I think they have 17 kids or so in FFA. I don't think one of them comes from a ranch family, just because there's not that many. And so we got to start at the lower level, young level too, to keep these kids interested and keep them going. So,
great point. Did you have a
The other thing with that ag education, because we had the same thing happen, ours got booted out, we were able to bring it back, but because STEM has become such a big deal, and it's a good thing, but we're gearing all our children to these, you know, expensive higher education jobs, and I think especially we see a lot of kids who are just floundering because they're hands-on kind of people, and maybe we need to look at somehow of getting agriculture worked into, because it's as important as STEM, all the science and technology and all of that, and they link, but one is more hands-on. It's like having tech schools versus universities. Both are important.
Great point. Anybody else? So we're going to just combine our last two, and this kind of just starts to tie everything together. And, you know, back to keeping land in production, back to, hey, we really need to get this next generation up and going. And let's just talk about the barriers to entry. You know, is it even possible? So if you are in a different industry and you woke up one day and I says, you know what, I want to be a rancher. You know, is that even possible? And, you know, that's a pretty uphill battle. Just the fact of being able to have access to land or capital, you know, it just seems like almost an impossible thought. And should it be possible, you know, for, you know, new generation producers to come in? You know, just going back to being able to take care of our own country. You know, we talk about why aren't the young producers or that came from the production background, why are they not getting into the business? And it's really a combination of all of these things we just talked about. And do we need to incentivize them differently? Do they need to be part of the operation? Lots of discussion about that. And it seems like the chicken or the egg, you know. So I hire someone off Ranch World ads, and they come to my operation, and they want to run cows and, you know, be part of it. But I'd only known them for like a week. You know, there's a comfort level that you have to grow to, and it seems like more times than not, everyone's on a different schedule of where we're going to get to that comfort level. And I don't have the right answer. And, you know, everyone's going to have a different answer there. You know, I know, you know, my dad's day, you'd probably have to work for him a long time before you would ever get any cows on the place, you know. We've done that. Horses have been a big thing to the point where horses have become a problem. You know, next thing you know, because we run cow camps, and I went to my cow camp, and I had a full horse trading operation going on, and they kind of forgot about the cows. So, you know, there's this all different types of stories there. So it's the one thing that's been fun to talk about that a lot of operations have shared is what we've been calling mentorship. And the mentorship is really almost is how do we take care of our own? And how do we create that environment, just like Cassie said, to try to create a win? And man, we've had some really cool stories out of Win It. We've had stories where it was in Glendive where, you know, this couple, they did not have any children, and they wound up working with a couple, and they are selling that ranch to that couple for lack of better terms at production costs. We also talked about, hey, if we really want to try to help, do we need to lease our ground that we're not using to the highest bidder? You know, or should we try to at least make that offer or make it available to a younger producer or someone's trying to get going so they do have access to the land? All of those have been discussed to where, you know, I can't remember which town it was in, but you know, younger producer came up to us afterwards and said, man, I would love to talk about the access to land, but the people that I'm bidding against and keep getting outbid by were in the audience. And so we talked about that. So how do you create that for them? And it's going to be these unique situations. We had a veterinarian at the Three Forks, you know, talk about in the veterinary world, there's a common website to where, hey, I'm a I am a veterinarian wanting to retire and trying to get hooked up with a veterinarian trying to get going. And so they're trying to make those matches. You know, do we need to do a better job as an industry to try to, you know, create that union or at least awareness of who's even saying, hey, pick me type of thing. So I'm going to leave it open to that. I mean, and we were welcome to talk about really kind of almost whatever at this point, if you have other topics too, but any thoughts on the membership or mentorship or even examples? Would love to hear some other examples.
One of the things we do at our ranch is we have 3 different internships for the year. We have a spring one, fall one, and a winter one. And we've done that now for probably 20 years and take 3 kids a year. And we have applications from all over the nation for those internships. And it's been a great thing. Most all the kids have been great. A lot of those kids have gone on and been in different positions. I've got one in Virginia was in the Department of Agriculture. Now he's, I think, head of Farm Bureau there. We have other ones that are running ranches and other ones that are in just different capacities. But and we offer that, you know, like I said, 3 a year.
So I just have a question. How are you advertising for those internships?
Actually, my daughter does it. And basically it's on the internet, or basically Facebook, internet. Originally, we sent letters out to colleges, and then from that, it kind of grew from word of mouth. And I mean, we've had kids from Wisconsin, Nebraska, Ohio, New York, Massachusetts, Montana, Oregon, pretty much all over the nation.
Did you have one over here?
Hi there, Samantha Ferret, Tosta, Montana. Just a brief introduction. I am the Region 6 Director from U.S. Cattlemen's Association, representing all of Montana and Idaho. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I also work part-time for Montana Farmers Union as a membership ambassador. I am a 4-H leader. I am an FFA alumni and supporter. I believe in educating youth wholeheartedly. Most of my weekends are spent with the youth and following through with them on scholarships, experiences through 4-H, FFA, all of these things. So I think it's super important to give these kids a window of opportunity and let them know that it's a possibility. I remember when I was a very young girl, the 2 things I wanted to be when I grew up was the first woman president of the United States or a rancher. I am a rancher so far. And but I didn't get that opportunity from my own family. I married into a ranch, thankfully, because we lost the ranch when I was young. And I thought that that was just never going to be an option for me. So that dream was gone. But I really do believe that it is possible for kids and youth and college-age kids to get into the industry in some capacity. You don't have to own ground to be a rancher or a farmer. You can work for someone and still be considered a rancher and a farmer and be that career. So give opportunities, follow through on internships. I don't know how your internships work, Bob, if it's self paid for, or if it's through different, I don't know, grants or how you operate. I know there's some neat opportunities through agritourism that's starting to get a lot of traction in Montana, and that can be a way for youth to get involved as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there and encourage us all, if we can and are able, to bring in youth to our farms and ranches and show them the possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, no doubt. I mean, God, I'm 4-H and FFA. I mean, we have to defend that to the end. I mean, it's just amazing, and with me being out of Billings, all of the 4th grade kids are taken to the Nile. And here in our state, I mean, there's going to be kids there that's probably the first time they ever, are that close to animals, and we just need to really make sure that continues. Any other thoughts? Any other comments or feedback or?
Is this on? Here's my 2 thoughts. One of them is don't forget about your daughters, because a lot of this gets into a stupid old generational pass it to the boy, to the boy, to the boy, to the boy, and the daughters get left out. And like she just said, she had to marry into a ranch family in order to become a rancher, and that's a little disappointing. The daughters who work and did a lot and get kicked off because they're not the boy and gonna pass it down to the next won't be the same last name. That's disappointing. And the other thing is, we do a great job a lot of times of rallying amongst our own people and not with the people who probably need to hear us. And somehow we need to make more of an effort of reaching the people who don't understand it. All they see is the liberal shit they get fed on the TV. And right here's a good group of people, and everybody's kind of like-minded, and you got to reach the non-like-minded people is our biggest problem. One of our biggest problems. And be on social media. I mean, a lot of people are on social media. Post the good photos. Post the good stuff that's going on. Post the scenery photos. Post the branding photos. And the people who you're friends with, not all of your friends on whatever social media you're on are in the same mind frame you are, but you keep posting that stuff, there'll be people following you just to see your good posts, your good farm posts, your good ranch posts, your good irrigating your meadows posts, your good weaning posts. It's important to reach the people not in this room.
Great, yep.
So add to some ideas. I had to have a day job for a number of years, and I worked with conservation districts around the state. And when the APR started showing up, the concern was there. And so everybody was, what do we do? What do we do? And I talked to the local districts, and I said, we need to go out and talk with those, the older generation that are to the age. They're like, well, we're getting tired. We don't have anybody to pass it on to. And just sit down and have a cup of coffee and say, one, don't sell to the APR, because there's a lot of options. You've worked a generation or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 to put this together. And options are mentor a younger generation, or what we're seeing with, and you might be familiar with it, with Leslie, the RSA, Rancher Stewardship Alliance, and what their workings with the Matador Ranch, in turn having that as a grass banking system. The Winnett ACES is starting to do the same thing. I don't know if we have anything around down in the southwest part of the state similar like that, but it's ideal. And now the Matador is looking at, okay, older gents, we used to rent grass to you, but we got to keep the younger guys in, so we're going to back you up a little bit. And the older gentlemen were like, absolutely. So they let the younger guys come in and rent grass at a reduced rate on if they did certain conservation measures. So those are the things. My thought is we've got a lot of big money coming in, buying some big outfits. We've seen that in the Lewistown country, taking a lot of pretty prime country out of production. Maybe we need to talk with those folks and say, this is prime country because of agriculture. Let's not take it out. Let's work with the younger generation. But that takes a lot of effort from folks like us to sit around the table and put those things together and have those conversations. And so, we got to take some ownership and follow the lead. Dale Veseth up there started it with the Matador. The folks, Diane Algren's a big component there in Winnett. And let's learn from those guys and watch those successes and see if we can't do something around here and keep these big outfits that get bought up in production. Figure out some incentive. Bake cookies or something for these guys. Bring scotch or whatever the heck.
Dave Terrell. I want to support the things that have been said about trying to find creative and innovative ways to get youth and individuals that aren't born into the ranch engaged in creative and innovative ways that it appeals to someone other than someone that was raised in a family. And from my life, it's been pretty much understood that unless you were born in the family or born in a lot of money, you don't have a place other than to work in the bunkhouse. And I think that that's a really important element if you're trying to look into the future to address innovative ways to be able to look at that issue. The other thing that I think may be even more important in my mind is that, and we're talking about the future and the profitability of agriculture, I think that agriculture has been marketing itself to a fair degree on the value of production of food for the country. But I think that there are some other tremendous values that need to be marketed, even branded in our world associated with the values and benefits of agriculture. One of those is that agriculture is the world's best stewards of natural resources. And there is so much out there in terms of NGOs and other organizations that market as if agriculture is the enemy. And quite frankly, there's no one that cares more and has more deeper value and incentive to take good care of water and soil resources than agriculture. That doesn't mean that agriculture doesn't have some cleaning up to do in terms of regenerative agriculture and some of those kind of things. But I do believe and want to go on record that I think agriculture's got a wonderful opportunity to enhance profitability into the future by creating market segments or branding images of the value of agriculture to lifestyle, to the culture of what citizens in this country came to under this Constitution, for the ability for families, the framework of a lifestyle that is sought after, and in a framework where the economy and the culture are things that can be marketed, that this country is searching for. And so I would throw that out as a seed for thought for future conversations to explore ways in which marketing of agriculture can be done in a way that, you go back to where's the beef? What did that do in terms of having a significant impact in the market segment? Well, I think that there's some other slogans and terms that could be branded for agriculture's values in this country that could really help it in profitability in the future and bringing in more innovative youth programs.
Great comments. You're not running for office or anything? That sounded good. That was good.
I'm here for that purpose.
Yep.
So I just have one more thing to say, and so I was 56 when I started into I came out of a different career and came back to run the family ranch, and I was in the high-tech industry and then the utility industry for a long time. This is a tough business. I've got an MBA, and if you looked at the numbers, you'd frighten off most prospective business people. There's a passion to it, though. There's a lifestyle. That's what I've been trying to explain to my wife. But one of the things that would really be helpful is some kind of somewhat formalized education program for people like me or young people trying to get started, like, continuing education type stuff, for all the options that are out there, like these programs, or like, ways to market your cattle, or ways to get more pounds out of them, that kind of thing. It would be really helpful if there was something like that.
Yeah, great recommendation. Anyone else? Yep, right up here.
Yeah, John Ferret again, thank you. I'd like to just thank stock growers and Turk. I know you've probably put on I don't know if you've calculated the miles you've put on in the last couple months. I'm not a stock growers member. I'm a USCA member and a Montana Cattlemen's member and a Farmers Union member. And I've been paying attention because I think this is something we all need to get behind. I think it's fitting to wrap up your list of goals with barriers to entry. I think youth and more entry into agriculture solves all the rest of the problems. I know taxes is a barrier to entry for youth. I know wages are. So your H-2A, if there was some way that we could pay or give a tax incentive to youth that stayed employed in agriculture for those 12 months contracts or something like that, if they walked out with a W-2 from an approved ranch, if they got a tax break that way. If they're just coming to work to get their hands dirty and get a paycheck, they can go to Taco Bell, make just as much money, and go home at night and have the same paycheck. We're in agriculture because we're passionate about it. We have to incentivize that next generation somehow. It's going to take a learning curve on how to do that. There again, I support all youth. You know, the 4-H and FFA, we're big leaders in that. That's a way to get interns. The mentorship program, we've heard some pretty interesting concepts on how to do that. There again, if you can transition your ranch to someone and avoid that capital gains if it stays in agriculture, so you can sell it at a lower rate to somebody coming in. I think that was one of the best ideas I've heard out of all these meetings. Don't know how to write that up, but that is a big one, I think. So we aren't having to sell to the highest dollar just so we can pay those taxes in the end. My son, he went off to be an ag education instructor because I told him he needed to go someplace else, and that's how he figured he could advocate for the world, for our world. And so hopefully eventually he comes back. If not, he's in a good place. But yeah, down the road I'll have to address all these issues myself. So thank you.
Great thoughts. Anybody else? Oh, John.
John Hagenbarth, just down the road south of here. At the Dillon meeting, an older gentleman called me after the meeting, and he didn't feel it appropriate to visit about his son's situation with his son not being there, but he voiced it to me, and he had a great point. Well, the first of it was a lot of these federal grounds are pretty reasonable leases. Maybe don't cost a whole lot. Some do, some don't, you know, as far as management and stuff. But if a younger outfit or a younger operator could, or anybody, get a hold of some of that base property and then the lease, you can run quite a few AUMs compared to having to buy it all private. And anyway, his son was able to do that, but had the option to the lease next door, but could not get he exhausted his lending capabilities and couldn't afford the base property to get the next lease next door. So there was some issues. It's brought up, I think, anyway, maybe address some of those base property leases for these federal leases. But just in general, the other thing he said is, you just got to be tough and you got to go. This isn't easy, but it's achievable. And I know the young man, and he's going to make it. He and his wife are. And I know other examples very much so. And in the meantime, don't wait for the situation to be perfect to try to achieve your dream of getting a ranch, because it's never going to be. I hope we make some success through all of this, but I still think that success is achievable now. But you got to work harder than everybody else. You got to be more passionate, and you have to attack it. And you cannot win playing defense, and you can't win belly aching. I mean, there's advocating, and then there's going and get it done. And you just, gosh, I think there's opportunity now. So don't wait, but you got to go after it, and you got to be tough, and you got to work hard, because it is not easy, as everybody knows.
Jay Spurrier Hall. Probably the closest thing in this room to the next generation. I'm 29. Pretty bad when I'm only that old or young and I don't know my age. But yeah, like I said, we're probably the closest thing in here to next generation. We work for her parents. The ranch runs about 350 cows. We run 60 cows on top of that. But yeah, it's not easy.
We have not had a whole lot of help getting going. The ranch allows us to run 20 cows as part of payment. You know, the rest we find our own lease ground. We've hammered it out. I do a lot of other jobs. I clip bulls all winter for some of the biggest names in Montana that sell bulls. Ride colts, cowboy 2-3 days a week for ranches around our area. Work here at MLA on sale days and whenever else they need me. There's a lot of opportunities out there for young people. Problem is what I found out is there's just not a lot of them willing to take the risk and do the work. I mean, we have 3 small kids, 3, 5, and 7. I'll remember that. We get in late every night. It's tough trying to get kids into bed by 8 and, get up and go to school and whatnot. But yeah, I guess along with what he said, you just got to do it and go for it. We've been at it now for 9 years. We just recently started buying into some registered Simmental Sim Angus. It's not easy, the risk that we take, but I guess you just got to do it sometimes. So,
Thanks for sharing. That's love hearing that, actually. Anybody else? So if tonight we covered a lot of stuff, and we could probably nitpick it forever. And if you had a thought and it comes up afterwards, go to our website mtbeef.org, and the staff has a platform there where you can share more information, and just keep in this context. I mean, we are really here to share ideas to maybe help create another idea. There's no real pride of authorship. This is for us. And the big thing is what we've learned as we've gone across the state is, what the bottom line is, we're all Montanans. It doesn't matter what organization you're from or what. The bottom line is we're just trying to stay in business. And we're trying to carry on legacies or create a legacy. And that's really the main goal that we have to always keep in mind as we all try to work together. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ray Lee. I really appreciate everybody's feedback. We're going to have to just bug you one more time with your phones, and we'll follow up with a last survey. Also, make sure that you have your name in the hat or in the cooler with Ian for the drawing here coming up too. So if you don't have that, do not be bashful and get your hand in the air. But remember, you can only enter once. So.
Thanks, Turk. And I would just reiterate what Turk said, and also thank everyone from the other organizations that shared their comments tonight. And we've been in touch with all of your leaderships, and if there's opportunities for us to engage in further conversations or have additional meetings or things like that, please let us know, because we would love to partner with you and find common sense solutions for our industry going forward. John.
Yeah, I guess along with that, I'd like to make just a couple final comments. One thing that's interesting coming out of these meetings is bringing people together. To John's point, just in Stevensville last night, we talked about some of these Forest Service allotments, and people brought up, there's some of these allotments sitting vacant that aren't being utilized right now. What can we do about it? Well, we were fortunate that Sean Heinert and Matt Anderson from the Forest Service were sitting there because we'd invited them and they were there. And they're the good guys. They're our friends. We have friends in the Forest Service and the BLM. I could go on and on and on tonight about the things where we disagree with them, but we have friends there. And we were able to put those people together. And will they get something done? Are those people going to end up leasing those allotments? I have no idea. It's a tough, tough challenge. But we got the people together, and they're talking about it. So that's a positive thing. And I guess to the point that was brought up over here, and with these other organizations, and Jules brought this up early, about staying informed. If we're going to move forward, we need to stay informed and we need to stay involved. And the way you do that is through groups like this. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask every one of you that aren't members of Montana Stock Growers, we want you, we need you, we'd like you to join. But if you're not members of Montana Stock Growers, think very seriously about joining your county farm bureau. Look at these other organizations. you know, we'd like you at stock growers. You can talk to John about joining wool growers. I mean, just get involved, stay informed and involved one way or another.
Thanks. All right, so grab your phones. We have 3 final questions. The first one we'll put up is kind of about what you've heard tonight. So, oh, yes. Oh, yes. The code is it's on the second page. Okay, perfect. So this question is the 5 areas of focus that we talked about. We want you to rank those. So obviously, like we said, this is our 11th listening session. We've heard a lot of great ideas at some point, and in some point this month, we are going to have to whittle it down and start prioritizing areas of focus and some tactical things. And so we want to hear from you. From what you've heard tonight, kind of rank for us 1 through 5 what areas you think should be our top priority, moving down to the 5th priority. All right, looks like answers are in, so let's move to the next one. What topics from tonight's discussion did you find the most valuable? Ooh, Bob Sitz got a special call out. Did you write that yourself, Bob? I would call you out, Jim, but I'm not allowed to. All right, and our final question. How can MSGA and the Producer Profitability Initiative serve you and your family's operation? And as we do that, Ian's bringing over the cooler. Last call if anybody needs to get their names in the cooler. We want to thank BI as well as Western Ranch Supply. They've donated a vaccine cooler for each of our meetings, and so we are really appreciative of them and their partnership as we went on this roadshow. All right. It looks like our winner is Joanne Brakel. Oh, excellent. Congratulations. You are taking home a new cooler. So you can meet up with Ian and get that after the meeting. Oh, sure. Can you go back one? One more. The number 1 is minimizing barriers for entry for young or beginning producers, and 2 is tax climate. All right, Turk, final comments?
So we're just going to wrap up here. Just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time. We took 2 hours of your time, or maybe a little more than that, but we definitely think it's really worth all of us coming together like this and having open dialogue, really gathering our information from each other. Because as we've learned, as we keep sharing more information, we just get better ideas, because we really are all in the same boat. And that's what's been super powerful about all of this. The question is so where do we go from here? And We're getting towards the tail end of our listing sessions. All of this information is getting compiled. You're going to get some follow-up emails on just from your surveys tonight, just so you can see what everyone else, how they responded. And then this is going to be presented at the Montana Stock Growers Mid-Year Convention in Miles City here in a couple weeks. And so I would love to, invite you to participate and share even further thoughts in that point as well too. This is really the beginning. And so what we have been doing and our staff has been doing is talking with other states. We've been talking with other cattlemen's organizations. And in just this a couple weeks ago, we mentioned it earlier, we were in D.C. sharing a lot of these conversations with our senators. We were sharing it with our congressmen, the Senatorial Ag Committee, as well as other leadership of other agencies. And the bottom line is everyone is very, very attentive to what's going on in Montana right now. And they really want to know what these results are about. And they really want to know what you have to say. Because that is the most really important part of this whole process, is we're gathering all real Montana farmers and ranchers' thoughts and even suggestions on what do we need to do to make a better Montana as well as a better industry. And so we've already had some states saying, hey, this process that started in Montana, wow. And we're just getting word now that actually Alabama is going to mirror what Montana stock growers did in their state, and that's going to start in June. And we've been also invited to other organizations' summer meetings too to collaborate. There is, what is happening right now is really the balls are rolling on really to try to make sure that we're getting the feedback from the real farmers and ranchers across the country. And ultimately, these will go to our national organizations, and ultimately, these are going to go to our officials to where we can all work together and say, hey, you know what, we might be from different organizations, but these are the topics that we're all going to work together and really try to make a difference that makes a major impact for our state as well as our country's agriculture. And so thank you very much for being part of the process. We talked about being involved. You couldn't have said it any better. Just please make sure that you're informed. Be involved with an organization. Obviously, we're with stock growers, but you need to make sure that you're as informed as you possibly can, not only to be a good business, but our political climate is changing all the time. And make sure that you vote and make sure that you're informed. So with that, thank you. And if there's any other suggestions or anything, please reach out to Rayleigh. And for sure, we'd love for more comments on the website. So thank you all for being here tonight.